For 15 years, the celebrity bodyguard had lived by one rule: fear keeps people alive. He had stood behind movie legends, shadowed politicians through hostile crowds, and scanned rooms where a single mistake could mean chaos. His reputation was built on intimidation: the sharp stare, the squared shoulders, the unspoken warning that danger would be met without hesitation. People moved aside when he walked. That, to him, was protection. So when he noticed the calm, lean man standing quietly near the edge of the film set, he barely hid his amusement. The set was buzzing, cables sprawled across the ground, crew members shouting cues, assistants rushing back and forth. Tension always lived in places like this, and the bodyguard thrived on it. He watched everyone, trusted no one, especially not men who looked too relaxed. The stranger wore no uniform, no badge, no sign of authority. Just simple clothes, an unassuming posture, and eyes that seemed more curious than cautious. The bodyguard stepped closer, chest out, voice edged with superiority. "You look fast," he said, almost mocking, "but speed doesn't protect anyone." A few nearby crew members glanced over, sensing friction. This was the kind of moment that usually ended with embarrassment, someone being put in their place. The bodyguard expected the usual reactions: anger, excuses, maybe nervous laughter. But the man didn't react the way anyone expected. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He didn't clench his fists or shift into a defensive stance. He simply smiled. Not a cocky smile. Not a forced one. A quiet, knowing smile, the kind that unsettles people who rely on dominance. The bodyguard frowned. Something about that calm felt wrong. Dangerous, even. But his pride pushed the thought away. 15 years of experience told him confidence like this was fake. A mask that cracked the moment pressure arrived. Around them, the noise of the set continued, unaware that something invisible had just changed. The air felt heavier, like the pause before a storm no one saw coming. The calm man met the bodyguard's eyes, steady and unreadable. No fear. No challenge. Just presence. And in that instant, before anyone spoke another word, the bodyguard unknowingly stood at the edge of the shortest lesson of his life. 7 seconds. That's all it would take. The man's name was Bruce Lee. The set buzzed with cameras, wires, lights, and egos colliding all at once. Crew members shouted numbers, assistants sprinted with clipboards, and stunt coordinators argued over angles. It was controlled chaos, the kind of environment where mistakes hid easily and danger wore ordinary clothes. The bodyguard thrived in places like this. He paced the perimeter like a wolf guarding its territory, eyes sharp, jaw tight, every sense tuned for threat. 15 years in the job had trained him to trust instinct over appearances. Smiles could be weapons. Calm could be deception. And anyone who didn't look alert enough automatically looked suspicious. People noticed him. They always did. When he stopped walking, conversations quieted. When he turned his head, crew members adjusted their distance. That invisible authority fed his pride. In his mind, fear wasn't cruelty, it was professionalism. If people were uneasy around him, that meant he was doing his job right. Across the set, Bruce Lee watched a stunt rehearsal unfold. 2 performers practiced a carefully choreographed fall, mistiming their steps by inches each time. Bruce leaned in slightly, studying foot placement, weight transfer, the rhythm of movement. His face remained relaxed, curious, as if he were solving a quiet puzzle no one else noticed. That was when the bodyguard saw him step closer. Immediately, the guard moved. One firm step. One solid arm stretched out, blocking Bruce's path without hesitation. It wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't polite either. It was the practiced gesture of someone used to being obeyed. "Stay back," the bodyguard said, voice low and final. Then, with a faint smirk added for effect, he continued, "I've seen men like you. Muscles don't save lives." A few nearby crew members froze, pretending not to listen while hearing every word. Moments like these carried tension, not loud, but sharp. Someone was about to be reminded of their place. Bruce stopped instantly. He didn't push the arm away. He didn't question the authority behind it. He didn't even look annoyed. Instead, he nodded. Respectfully. "I don't rely on muscles," Bruce said softly. His tone wasn't defensive. It wasn't sarcastic. It was matter of fact, like someone stating the weather. That calm response unsettled the bodyguard more than anger ever could. He expected resistance, or embarrassment, or excuses. He got none of it. The bodyguard scoffed inwardly. Calm words were easy when nothing was happening. He'd heard them before. Men who talked about balance, awareness, philosophy. They all crumbled the moment chaos arrived. Bruce, however, didn't move away. He simply remained where he was, hands relaxed at his sides, eyes following the stunt again, not the guard. Not the crowd. The movement. That quiet focus made the bodyguard uneasy, though he wouldn't admit it. There was no fear in Bruce's posture. No tension in his shoulders. Just stillness, like a lake that didn't ripple even when stones were thrown at it. Around them, the set continued to hum, unaware that two very different worlds had just collided, one built on dominance, the other on discipline. If you believe calm confidence speaks louder than arrogance, drop a comment below and hit like. Let's see how many people still value humility over noise. Because what was about to happen next would prove that strength doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it simply waits. The guard laughed, not quietly, not politely, but loud enough for the nearby crew to hear. It was the kind of laugh meant to establish dominance, to remind everyone who held authority in the space. Heads turned. A few people exchanged glances. Conflict had a sound, and this was it. "I've trained 15 years, the guard said, tapping his chest with confidence. Real-world protection. Crowds. Ambushes. Weapons." He shook his head slightly and looked Bruce up and down. "You couldn't protect anyone in a real threat." The words hung in the air, heavy with certainty. Bruce didn't respond right away. Instead, his eyes drifted past the guard's shoulder, slowly scanning the set. To anyone else, it looked like disinterest. But to someone trained in awareness, it was calculation. Cables lay loosely coiled near walking paths. A tall metal lighting pole leaned slightly off balance. A ladder wasn't secured properly. Extras moved unpredictably. Noise masked footsteps. Chaos wasn't loud to Bruce. It was patterned. The guard mistook the silence for hesitation and pressed on. "Out there," he continued, gesturing vaguely, "things move fast. Panic hits. People freeze. That calm act disappears the second pressure shows up." Bruce finally looked back at him. Still calm. Still steady. He spoke quietly, almost thoughtfully. "Pressure doesn't create behavior," he said. "It reveals it." The guard snorted. "That's philosophy. This is reality." Bruce tilted his head slightly, as if considering whether the moment was worth pursuing. Around them, the crew pretended not to listen, though every ear was tuned in. Stunt performers paused mid-stretch. Assistants slowed their steps. Something about the contrast between the two men, one loud, one silent, pulled attention like gravity. Bruce took a small step forward, closing the distance just enough to be noticed. "May I show you something?" he asked. "In 7 seconds?" The guard blinked, caught off guard by the question. 7 seconds, he repeated, then laughed again. "You think this is a movie trick?" Bruce didn't smile this time. He didn't frown either. His expression remained neutral, composed. "Not a trick," he said. "A demonstration." The guard's pride flared. In front of the crew, backing down wasn't an option. He had built his reputation on certainty, on being unchallengeable. This quiet man asking permission felt almost insulting. He stepped closer, squaring his shoulders. "Try," the guard said, smirking. The word barely left his mouth before something shifted. Not movement, intention. Bruce adjusted his stance subtly. Feet rooted, knees relaxed, center lowered by a fraction. The guard didn't notice. He was too busy posturing, too busy believing experience alone guaranteed control. But experience without awareness is habit. And habits can be redirected. Bruce's gaze locked onto the guard's eyes, not aggressively, but attentively. He wasn't looking for fear. He was measuring timing, distance, balance. The guard suddenly felt exposed, though nothing had happened yet. His grip tightened unconsciously. His breathing changed. His body prepared for a confrontation it didn't fully understand. The surrounding noise seemed to dull. 7 seconds hadn't started yet. But the lesson already had. Bruce spoke once more, calm as ever. "You rely on force," he said. "I rely on position." The guard scoffed, but there was hesitation now, just a trace. He hadn't expected explanation. He hadn't expected stillness to feel this heavy. The crew leaned in without realizing it. Phones slipped halfway out of pockets. Someone whispered, "Is that?" No one finished the thought. Because the moment had reached its breaking point. 7 seconds were about to begin. And for the first time in 15 years, the bodyguard didn't feel in control, even though nothing had touched him yet. 7 seconds. That's all it took. Not the kind of seconds people imagine when they think of a fight. No shouting. No dramatic wind-up. No explosion of violence. Just movement, precise, efficient, inevitable. Bruce stepped forward. Not aggressively. Not rushed. His motion was so smooth it almost looked slow, like water changing direction. The guard barely had time to register the shift before his own body betrayed him. His wrist, the one he'd relied on for years to block, shove, and control, was gently redirected, not yanked, not twisted. Redirected. The guard's instincts kicked in late. He tightened his grip, trying to reassert control, but that only fed Bruce's timing. With a subtle rotation of his hips and a small step off the center line, Bruce borrowed the guard's forward pressure and gave it a new purpose. Balance vanished. Not violently. Not dramatically. Just gone. The guard's weight shifted onto a foot that was no longer where his brain expected it to be. His shoulders tilted. His spine compensated. In that fraction of a second, Bruce was already somewhere else. Beside him, not in front of him. The crew gasped. A coiled cable slid under the guard's heel as his center of gravity betrayed him. Bruce had seen it the moment he scanned the set. He didn't push the guard onto it. He simply allowed the guard's own momentum to find it. The guard stumbled. Bruce's hand was suddenly at the man's elbow, not forcing, just guiding. Another hand hovered near the guard's neck, close enough to end the exchange instantly, yet completely still. Inches. That's all the space between awareness and consequence. Bruce stopped there. No strike. No choke. No slam. Just control. The guard froze mid-motion, heart pounding, breath caught halfway in his chest. His muscles locked, waiting for impact that never came. He realized something terrifying in that pause. If Bruce had wanted to hurt him, he would already be on the ground, or worse. Time slowed. Someone counted under their breath without realizing it. 1, 2. Bruce's voice cut through the tension, calm and steady. "Relax," he said. "You're safe." Safe. The word hit harder than any blow. The guard's eyes widened, not with pain, not with fear, but with realization. For the first time in 15 years, someone had neutralized him without aggression. Without anger. Without effort. 3, 4. Bruce released the elbow, stepping back a half pace while keeping the guard balanced on his feet. He hadn't taken anything from him, no dignity, no strength, only the illusion of control. 5, 6. The guard swallowed, suddenly aware of how loud his breathing was. His hands trembled slightly. Not from weakness, but from understanding. 7. 7 seconds. That's how long it took for 15 years of certainty to collapse. The set was silent. No equipment hum. No shouting. No laughter. Even the extras had stopped moving. Phones hovered mid-air, forgotten in trembling hands. Every eye in the space was locked on the two men standing there, one stunned, one serene. Bruce lowered his hands completely now, posture relaxed again, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. The moment was over for him. For everyone else, it was burned into memory. The guard took a step back, testing his balance. It was there. His strength hadn't been stolen. His training hadn't been erased. But his assumptions had been shattered. He looked at Bruce, really looked this time. Not as a challenge. Not as a curiosity. But as a mirror. Bruce met his gaze, expression gentle, almost apologetic. "Protection," he said softly, "isn't about overpowering chaos." He gestured subtly to the cables, the lights, the crowd. "It's about understanding it." The crew finally exhaled as one. Someone whispered, "That wasn't even a fight." They were right. It wasn't. It was a lesson, delivered in 7 seconds, without a single strike. And the bodyguard knew, deep down, that nothing in his 15 years of experience had prepared him for this kind of mastery. Not noise. Not force. Not fear. Just control. Bruce released him and stepped back. The movement was so casual it almost felt unreal, as if nothing significant had just happened. No dramatic pose. No victorious stance. He simply returned to the same relaxed posture he'd held before the exchange began, hands loose at his sides, breathing steady. "I don't protect people by being loud," Bruce said. "I protect them by being aware." His voice carried easily through the stunned silence, not because it was raised, but because no one dared interrupt it. The guard stood frozen for a moment longer, body still braced for impact that never came. Then the tension drained from his shoulders all at once. He exhaled deeply, as though waking from a dream he didn't realize he was in. Slowly, he bowed his head. "I've never seen that," he admitted. The words came out rough, stripped of pride. Not a performance. Not an apology. A confession. Around them, the crew began to murmur. Not laughter. Not mockery. Oh, the kind that spreads quietly, person to person, as people realize they've witnessed something rare. Someone lowered a camera without pressing record, suddenly unsure it felt right to capture the moment. The guard lifted his eyes again, this time without challenge. His expression had changed completely. The dominance was gone, replaced by curiosity and humility. "I thought control meant strength," he said. "Force. Presence. Making people feel afraid to cross you." Bruce listened without interrupting, nodding once. "And now?" Bruce asked. The guard hesitated, then answered honestly. "Now I see control means not needing to prove anything." Bruce smiled, not triumphantly, but kindly. "Fear makes people unpredictable," he said. "Awareness makes them safe." The words landed with weight. The guard glanced around the set, the same cables, the same lights, the same moving bodies. But now he saw them differently. Not as background noise, but as variables. Factors. Responsibility. For 15 years, he had believed protection began with intimidation. Now he realized intimidation only narrowed vision. It made everything about dominance, and blinded him to details that truly mattered. "I would have hurt you," the guard said quietly, "if this had gone the other way." Bruce met his gaze calmly. "And you would have believed you were right." That thought shook the guard more than anything else. One of the stunt coordinators stepped forward cautiously. "We, should reset for the next take." No one moved. They were still processing. Bruce gave a small nod, signaling that life could resume. The spell broke slowly. People returned to their stations, but something had shifted. The energy on set felt different, quieter, more focused. The guard stepped aside this time, clearing the path without being asked. "Thank you," he said, sincere and unguarded. Bruce inclined his head in return. Moments like this don't come with applause. They come with silence, the kind that forces reflection. And for everyone watching, something inside them had been challenged. If that moment changed your perspective even a little, like this video and subscribe, because real lessons don't come from shouting, they come from understanding. Bruce turned back toward the set. Once again, just another man among many. No entourage. No need for recognition. But the guard remained where he was, watching him go. 15 years of training hadn't been wasted, but they had been incomplete. Now, for the first time, he understood the difference between power that demands respect and mastery that earns it. And that realization would stay with him far longer than any scar ever could. From that day on, the bodyguard stood differently. It wasn't something most people noticed right away. There was no announcement, no dramatic change in uniform or posture meant to draw attention. But to those who worked around him daily, the shift was unmistakable. The man who once filled space with presence now occupied it with purpose. He watched more. Where he used to scan faces for defiance, he now scanned movement for intention. He noticed how people entered a room, how weight shifted before a step, how hands moved when words didn't match expressions. His awareness widened, no longer narrowed by the need to dominate. He spoke less. Commands were replaced by quiet guidance. Warnings became subtle redirections. Instead of barking orders, he positioned himself where problems dissolved before forming. People around him felt calmer, not because they were afraid, but because they felt protected. And whenever danger was near, he remembered those 7 seconds. Not as a moment of humiliation. Not as a challenge he lost. But as clarity. He remembered how easily force could be neutralized by understanding. How chaos could be guided instead of crushed. How true control didn't require intimidation, only presence. The lessons revealed themselves slowly, in ordinary moments. A fan pushing too close during a public appearance. A sudden movement in a crowded hallway. A tense exchange that once would have escalated. Each time, the bodyguard felt that old instinct rise, the urge to assert, to overpower, to prove authority. And each time he paused. 7 seconds. He adjusted his position. Shifted his angle. Created space instead of pressure. The situations resolved themselves almost effortlessly, leaving behind nothing but relief. People began to trust him more. Not the fearful kind of trust that comes from intimidation, but the kind built on safety. Celebrities relaxed in his presence. Staff moved more freely. Even crowds seemed to respond differently, sensing something steady rather than threatening. He understood now that fear multiplies chaos. Calm absorbs it. Months later, during another shoot, a younger guard approached him. Nervous. Eager. Proud. "How do you stay so composed?" the young man asked. "You never raise your voice." The bodyguard thought for a moment, then answered simply, "Because I don't need to." He didn't explain further. Some lessons can't be taught with words. They have to be felt, just like he had felt them. And Bruce Lee walked away from that set as he always did. No lingering. No retelling. No need to remind anyone of what he was capable of. He didn't collect admiration. He didn't correct anyone publicly. He didn't stay to ensure his lesson was remembered. Because mastery doesn't chase acknowledgement. Bruce returned to his work, training, teaching, refining himself. To him, the exchange wasn't extraordinary. It was simply alignment, the right response in the right moment. Calm. Silent. Undeniable. Years later, the bodyguard would still think about that day. Not as a story to boast about, but as a turning point, the moment his understanding of strength matured. He realized that true protection isn't about winning confrontations. It's about preventing them. And in that realization, Bruce Lee remained undefeated, not because he overcame others, but because he never needed to. Not in 7 seconds. Not ever. True strength isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving fear unnecessary. That was the real lesson hidden inside those 7 seconds. Not a display of dominance. Not a victory meant to impress onlookers. But a quiet demonstration that fear, when stripped away, leaves space for clarity, and clarity changes everything. Bruce Lee didn't embarrass the bodyguard. He educated him. He didn't raise his voice or demand respect. He didn't expose weakness to gain admiration. Instead, he allowed understanding to take its place. That kind of teaching lasts longer than shame ever could. In a world obsessed with volume, louder opinions, louder threats, louder reactions, Bruce's lesson feels almost rebellious. He showed that awareness outperforms aggression, and discipline outlasts ego. That true mastery doesn't seek conflict, it resolves it before it's born. The bodyguard's story isn't about failure. It's about evolution. 15 years of experience didn't disappear in 7 seconds. They transformed. What he lost wasn't status or confidence, but the illusion that force alone creates safety. What he gained was something far more valuable, understanding. And that lesson applies far beyond a film set. It applies to leadership, to parenting, to conflict in everyday life. When fear leads, chaos follows. When awareness leads, control becomes effortless. Bruce Lee's power was never about defeating opponents. It was about defeating unnecessary struggle. He didn't wait for danger to erupt. He understood it early, redirected it calmly, and left no scars behind. That's why his legacy endures. Not because he was loud, not because he was feared, but because he was precise, in thought, in movement, in character. If this story reminded you that discipline beats ego and awareness beats aggression, comment Bruce below, like the video, and subscribe for more real stories where wisdom wins over noise. And tell me, where are you watching from? Folded hands. Because no matter where you are in the world, these lessons travel further than fists ever could. True strength is silent. True respect is earned.